Welcome to Tales of Hope, where every paw print counts. Animal tie in the house, spreading love, hear the sounds. Every week animal stories, rights and welfare in the mix. Step up, take action, we're giving animals a fix. Tales of Hope, raise your voice, make some noise. Change the game for every animal, girl and boy. One world, one fight, let's turn the page. A future for the voiceless, bring hope to center stage.
Having worked undercover in high-risk operations, how different is it emotionally when the victims are voiceless animals?
It's very hard dealing. I mean, I'm very close to animals. It's very, very hard dealing with animals. One of the questions I get asked a lot, particularly by young lawyers, and I try and help. Now that I'm the age I am, I've got all this wisdom of my years and years. I try and talk to as many young people as I can because they're the future, they're the hope. And, one of the things that I talk to them about is you're going to come across some horrific cruelty when you're dealing with this. How do you deal with it? What I try to do is I only ever look at something from an evidential perspective. Which is quite difficult. But if you say you're watching a dogfight, just as an example, an online dogfight, watching a film, I don't need to see the blood and the dogs killing each other. I might need to see the face of the people that are involved in it. So that's what I focus my effort on, because then I don't need to look at the part that is. But I also don't need to look at the part that is almost gratuitous. I also don't look at things I don't need to deal with. I don't scroll through looking for animal abuse things. I've seen enough of it. I don't need to see any more. So how do I deal with it? I only focus my efforts on looking at things from an evidential perspective. It's quite difficult to do, but I guess because I've been doing this whole work for 40 odd years, I can just switch my brain into being an evidential capture and not deal with the emotive side. And it's just training, really. It's just getting used to doing things.
I know. I think it's going to be a good one for the listeners to understand, especially the ones who are going through that. Especially for me, even, like trying to balance that emotion and, look at it from a different perspective sort of thing.
Yeah, I mean, I don't say I don't get emotional with things, but I've got a personal management plan that I have in place. But I don't deal with things I don't need to deal with. People will send things to me and say, "Oh, look at that." No, I don't. I'm not dealing with that. If I've got to produce something for court, or I've got to deal with something for a campaign issue, then I might look at it. But I don't need to look at stuff people have just emailed me or sent me or telling me about, because that's adding to my emotional overload, and I can't. We're all limited in what we can take on.
Absolutely, we all have limited bandwidths. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Now, in your experience, what role does documenting animal cruelty play in uncovering hidden crimes against humans as well?
Yeah, I mean, I think I've covered some of this. I mean, I think it's really understanding why people are committing animal crimes. There are different ways. I try and see it as simply as I can. With policing is very complicated. The law is very complicated. And very, very generally, people commit crimes against animals, either because they don't understand or because they do understand and they've done it deliberately. If they don't understand, then it's about educating people so that they understand that these are sentient beings, that they feel pain, that if you harm them, you're also going to harm people, etc., etc. So that's the education side. And if people are doing it deliberately, then you need to think, okay, what other dangers do they pose? We have a responsibility within public protection to say, if somebody is deliberately harming an animal, what other dangers do they pose in a relationship, in society and community, to the family unit? If you don't do that, you're actually not doing your job properly in public protection.
Yeah, but my question would be, how important is it even for people witnessing something like that to document it? Like today, we live in a technology where your
Yeah.
mobile is everything there. So
Well,
how important does that role plays when you document it?
Okay, so I mean, I suppose if I'm completely non-police officer. I've never had any legal training, and I've seen something on social media. It looks like animal abuse. There are a couple of things I would remember. One of which is don't believe everything you see. It's social media, so it's probably been sent from one person to another person to another person. It's not what it looks like. So that's the first thing. Is and don't get caught up in that. The other thing is you need to be able to think that this could be the beginning of a very, very important investigation. So it makes sure that you actually screenshot it, you take an image of it, you note down what it is, and then you then need to be able to take it to the authorities who need to do something with it, and they don't always do that. But you'll always find police officers and members of sort of safeguarding teams and politicians who care. They may not all care. So if you hit a brick road with one person, try another person, try another person. Statistically, police officers will be subject of abuse as well. Some of those may actually understand what you're talking about. But if you make sure you've captured it properly, take it to the authorities and ask them to do something about it. And if they don't, put pressure on them then. But they are the professionals. If they come back and say, we've looked at it, it's not what you think it is, you need to accept it. Sometimes it's not... It's very easy to say police officers don't do stuff because they're corrupt or they're lazy, and some are, absolutely. But actually, you have to have evidence as well. You do need to be able to, if you've literally seen a picture of something on social media, you can't send someone to jail for the rest of their life, and prosecute them, to the ends of the earth with that, because sometimes it's, go back, it's not what you think it is. So it's about talking to each other. It's about communication. Ideally, within your local community, you need to have perhaps a community safety action group where you have animal advocates working with police officers, working with the judiciary, working with social workers, and you all sit down together and you say, okay, we want to keep our community safe. How can we do this together?
That's a very important point you've brought. I think that is something I will have to work on at my end over here. Now, what are some of the systemic blind spots in law enforcement or legislation that perpetuate animal abuse cycles?
That's a huge question. We could probably do a podcast on that on our own. But I would think, what are the blind spots? I mean, I think the first one is that people think it's extra work, taking animal abuse seriously. And I hope we've explained it's not. It's all part of safeguarding. And it's actually a prevention technique. It's only an animal is generally the comment. Well, we could all say that, couldn't we? It's only my wife. It's only a child. It's only, nothing justifies violence. Nothing justifies abuse. So we have to lose the it's only bit away, doesn't it? I mean, we want to be decent people. If we want to be decent societies, it's never just it's only anything. So the fact that it's only animal welfare, no, it isn't. I mean, animal welfare never happens in isolation. Animal abuse never happens in isolation. The welfare of animals and the welfare of people has for thousands and thousands of years been inextricably linked. You can't possibly protect one side of your community without protecting the other one. It all goes together. Within legislation, it's important to have the legislation, but it's important to understand what you're trying to achieve with the legislation. The maximum jail sentences, they're good. I mean, so yours, I think it was something like 50 rupees or so, 50,
yes.
Yeah, something like that. Greece has probably got the longest maximum jail sentence now, with a 10-year jail sentence for felony abuse. And they have given 1 year, one 10-year sentence. Maybe that's extreme, but you need to tell people that, you're doing this deliberately to harm a living being. It's important. It's an important matter. So you need to make sure that the sentences are decent. But I do think your laws are actually fairly good. They're just a little bit weak and need upgrading. I mean, I was born in the 1960s and I need upgrading. So your legislation So your legislation definitely does, and it'd be great to have some politicians who really get this, to actually say, right, I'm going to change this, And I know there's work. I did some training with one of your universities in Hyderabad. I think I did. Yeah, the animal, and I did some in India anyway. It's brilliant. Great to talk to young lawyers. So there's some brilliant work going across India. But the blind spots really are this, the fact that it's animals. It's just animals. It's just not as important, and it's so important because they're just part of our communities.
Very true. Now, could you share a campaign from Nature to Watch Foundation or Hidden Insight that you feel created a breakthrough in changing policy or perception?
I think one of the things I like most, I think the biggest campaigns that have impact are where you change cultures gradually. And one of the ones I did when I started working in Ukraine, which was 2018, one of the areas that we looked at was we targeted police officers to start using social media to talk about animals in their community in a positive way. So, if they rescued an animal or if they helped elderly people with animals, they needed to rehome them or whatever, they started putting everything on social media. So it was all good news stories about police officers. And police officers get a lot of bad press. A lot of people don't like the police. They just don't think they do a very good job. I mean, it happens everywhere. So if you get some good press going, oh, I like this, I'll interact with this. Wow, our police officers have rescued a bird, or they've rescued a deer or something. And that started gathering momentum. And when it got to 2022, when the invasion of Ukraine happened, media was involved in a lot of evacuations of people, particularly from eastern Ukraine. And police officers were still posting about, not only were they rescuing the families, they were rescuing the animals. They were taking, when they would take out the elderly lady and the grandmother in the house and all the children, they would also be rescuing the dogs, and they'd be taking them with them in their patrol vehicles. So it continued through the invasion, the war, because they start to recognise them as part of that family unit and part of that. And I think when I saw that transition, and I saw those high-profile images of a police officer carrying a family pet over the recently bombed bridge, I realised that, I think that campaign has actually made an impact, and I think that it started to change a bit of the culture around animals. And then, of course, politically, Ukraine has used the fact that the Ukrainians love their animals, Russians don't, in a PR context, because that's become huge, in terms of saying that we're a better society because we have empathy and we love our animals. So, it has had a huge impact.
That's a very impressive story. I think we need to do that something in India as well, starting with my city where I am. Now, in undercover investigation, how do you balance the need to expose cruelty with the trauma of witnessing it firsthand?
Yeah, so as I mentioned it earlier, I think as a police officer, you tend to learn how to be a police officer part of the time and not be a police officer another part of the time. But you also, it does impact on you. I think that I've had to carry a lot of stress, a lot of anxiety, a lot of personal issues forward as I've gone on. It's just how I am. My family's generally been in policing since 1844. I don't know. I've had since police officers sort of first started in London, and it's just part of my DNA, part of my who I am in terms of wanting to try and keep people and animals safe. So I kind of accept there is a knock-on effect. It will always scar you to a certain extent, but you just have to have a bit of a personal management plan. And for a lot of years, that was always with animals with me. If I want to go and de-stress, there's some rescue horses down the road from me now. I'll go and talk to the horses. We're going to spend a bit of time with each other. I'll listen to their problems. They listen to my problems. And I come away feeling happier and I'm better. So animals have always been good to me. So I kind of need to be good to them as well.
That's a good way, to be honest. You know what you mentioned, like you go and talk to the horses. I normally go and talk to the three I have, but the elder one, Karma, he is somebody who listens to you very carefully. And he is somebody, to be honest, by him coming home, we got him home in 2021. And I think in the last 4 years, he's helped me evolve as a human more than, anything else, because there's so many things that I've learned from him.
I had to, in my early policing days, I had to go and talk to some parents that their child had been killed, which is one of the worst things as a police officer you have to do. And there was a dog in the house, and the dog. It sounds crazy, but the dog knew exactly what was happening and was there for them. And it was horrific, but it made it slightly less horrific that the dog was there to support them. And I just think if animals can do that to us, don't we deserve to do something for them?
Absolutely. I mean, there is so much that they do for us, to be honest. They teach us so many things if we look at it from a different perspective. I mean, there is something, I would say, the unconditional love that they give you is something which we humans have forgotten about over a period of time, to be honest.
Yeah, A.A. Milne, who obviously wrote Winnie the Pooh books, supposed to have quoted, many people talk to the animals, but not many listen. That's the problem. And we do, that's, I go to the horses and I do talk to them, but actually, I want to hear what their day's been like and what they've been. I mean, it's probably, they've had their grass and they've had some vegetables to eat and they've walked around the field but I want to listen to them too. And we become hopefully a little bit more symbiotic. And if we could all just do that a little bit more, then everywhere would be better, wouldn't it? I just can't think anything negative of it.
Absolutely. Now, what is the hardest part of campaigning? Convincing the public, persuading policymakers, or sustaining momentum with the NGO?
I suppose that the hardest part is, identifying those that can actually make a difference rather than talking to those that will just agree with what you've got to say. It's very easy being in a room of animal welfare people and everybody going, yeah, I agree with that. But it's about getting that to people who don't necessarily agree with it and taking those slightly harder conversations on. I mean, where I've found that quite useful for me is I can walk into, a group of police officers generally, and because of my background, they will listen to me. So I use that when I can. It's harder, I do get it. If you're just coming straight out of law school and you want to go and talk to a seasoned detective and they don't really want to listen to you. So it's finding those people who are going to make the difference and saying, listen to me for a minute, having a 2-minute pitch of your argument, listen to me for 30 seconds. I'm going to change your mind in 30 seconds. How can I do that? Keep going over it in your head and go, right, if I bumped into somebody in the street, didn't agree with me, how can I make them at least rethink?
That's so true, Now, how do you
which is where I think the protect animals, protect people campaign is 4 words. People see it, and either they agree with it, disagree with it, or maybe they ask the question. We started you sort of saying, tell me a bit more about it. That's what I want people to think. What does that mean?
Absolutely. And I think for us in India, it's it's the policymakers which we need to work with. And not only the policymakers, but I think, you see, in India, I mean, given from my experience where I come from, the policymakers are there, the policies are there. But during our conversation, I remember in the initial part, it is also the people who enforce this. It needs to be enforced. I mean, until and unless, because I remember speaking to a couple of, lawyers Indian lawyers who've been into policy, dealing with policymakers, and there was one of the persons who really said, very carefully, see, we have to make sure that all the stakeholders come on the same, they are on the same platform. Like, the judges, the law is there, the policy is there, but it's the police at the end of the day who has to enforce it. If they don't enforce it, I mean, we're going to miss the whole, the whole chain is broken, sort of thing. So I think,
I mean, police officers generally at the front line of a lot of things. A lot of the society's issues they get thrown into, from riots to mental health issues. They're always the ones that have to pick up whatever's happening, and that's where I kind of want to target the work. It's just to get as many of them as I can to take it on board. You won't ever achieve all of them. There'll always be people there that disagree with you, and you can't ever convince everybody. But if you can convince enough people, then you start to make a change.
Absolutely, you just rightly said that. Getting that handful of people together so that you can make that change. That's the most important aspect. Now, how do you personally cope with compassion fatigue or the emotional burden, or constantly engaging with cruelty? I remember you've been talking about it, your personal management, but how do you cope with it?
Yeah, I mean, I honestly, not as well as I should do. It's hard. I find it actually easier dealing with larger incidents than with a build-up of incidents. So if I deal with one big case or one big issue, it's much easier to deal with the build-up to it, deal with the case, and then have some downtime. Where I struggle is where I have lots of smaller cases happening again and again and again and again, and you need to break that cycle somehow. So, before I came to do my podcast today, there's an area where there are a lot of wild birds. So I went down there, I had a cup of coffee, I sat down, and I spent some time in nature, and used that as my thinking time, my sort of de-stressing time. And I'll do something else later. So, but I need to find that space where I can actually have a chance to move on from my everyday work. And everybody's different, but it's just it's so important that when you're dealing with this, that you have a plan that works for you. It's not going to be great. Mine has never been great. I've taken on far more than I should have done. I made a lot of mistakes with it. You will make mistakes with it, but keep trying, and it gets better. It does get better.
You just rightly said, sometimes we take more than we can chew. That's what we all do, with the animals. It's just that you rightly said, even I do that at times. I take more than I can chew. Now, what does justice for animal look like in your vision of the future?
I think legally, animals need to be treated as a better entity than they are. So I think that currently they're treated as things, and I think that's a big problem. I think that one of the areas that I've been quite impressed with is very often the welfare of animals sits under perhaps the police, the Minister of Agriculture, or that kind of thing.
Yes.
Within Greece, one of the first changes that happened was animal welfare sat under the Minister of Civil Protection. So the people responsible for keeping society safe, as opposed to, just a thing, just so farm animals are treated the same as dogs and cats. So I think that's a big difference. So put animal welfare the same place as human welfare, whether it's in strategy, litigation, policies, government departments, whatever. So I think that's important. Changing the identity of them within legislation in terms of them being an entity would be brilliant. I mean, I'd love to see them, always treated as sentient beings in society. But I think we've got quite a long way to go there. But definitely given a different legal protection than just a thing. How can a garden implement be the same as a dog or a cat? Can't be, can it? I mean, they feel things. They need to be treated differently. So that's good. I think we should put them. They should be interwoven. Animal welfare and animal cruelty should be interwoven within all our policies and strategy. So, for example, one thing I'm trying to do at the moment is I'm keen that all animal welfare organisations have a domestic abuse policy. What are they going to do about supporting members of domestic abuse? But all domestic abuse organisations.
You said you want all the NGOs to come together and
I think if you're an organisation which has a responsibility for people, you should also have a responsibility for animals. And what is that? And then if you're a responsibility that, if you're an organisation that has a responsibility for animals, you should also have a responsibility for people. So if you're an animal charity, what do you do about people, about domestic abuse of people within your workforce? Because you can't look after one without looking after the other. And we can't, as animal welfare groups, say that we care about animals, but we don't care about people, because then how can we expect those that look after people care about animals? We should all look after each other.
Absolutely. Now, if governments worldwide could implement one single law tomorrow to change the landscape of animal, what would it be?
Just one single law. I think it would have to be to change the what an animal is within your respective legislation. Remove it from being a piece of property to being a sentient being. I think that would be the one law. It's a lot more complex than that. But if I could do one, that's probably the one I would do.
I think that's the most important one. If we could just start treating them as sentient beings,
Yeah,
that would be so wonderful. Now, you often stress the human-animal bond during the conversation. You've done that. How do you think healing that bond could also heal fractured societies?
The world, as perceived through social media at the moment, has got a lot of challenges. And I don't think improving our animal welfare, our relationship with animals would change everything. But it would be a big step if we actually were a lot more compassionate as a society, if we actually looked at people as individuals rather than stereotyping, if we looked at, all dogs are individuals and people are individuals too. I think if we could just understand, being more at one with animals and nature, I think we would start to make society just a little bit more reflective, a little bit more thoughtful of how we treat other people.
Absolutely. Now, beyond the campaigns and investigations, what has working with animals taught you about resilience, trust, and hope?
Animals have always been my world, but I think that they are certainly a lot more my world now. I'd struggle to go through a day without being around animals. If they disappeared off the face of the earth, it would be horrific. I can't imagine what it would be like, whether it's birds, whether it's wild animals, whether it's companion animals. They're so important to day-to-day existence, and I kind of feel like it's a real honour and a real pleasure to have had the opportunity to try and protect them, to work with them. I feel as if it's something they've given me, is that opportunity to be able to do it. So I really feel like I think I've achieved quite a few things in my long career. But animals having their trust in me, if I'm sitting down on a bench having a cup of coffee and a dog comes up and talks to me, or they don't talk to me, but we interact with each other. And I do tend to talk to every animal I see. But anyway, the fact that they said trust me and will come and talk to me, it's such a huge honour. It makes my heart feel enormous when they do that.
I get goosebumps when you say things like that, to be honest, because I can relate to all that. Now, coming to the last question of the podcast, if the next generation of investigators and activists were listening to this podcast, what's one piece of wisdom would you leave them with?
Probably take care of yourself. I think that you're in this for the long haul. You're going to be doing this for years because you're committed to it. But you can't do that if you burn out. So pace yourself, choose your arguments, choose your campaigns, choose the way that you're going to change society for better. But nothing's going to happen quickly. So look after yourself.
Now, Mark, this is where I come to the last part, where I normally leave it as an open mic for the guest to talk, or probably if there is a charity that they support, or a project that's closer to their heart, and they would like to take talk about it to our listeners, or they need support, because this is my way of giving back to the community, sort of thing.
I suppose that because it's October the 1st, October is National Domestic Abuse Awareness Month. It's a good time to be aware of that. But also from an animal perspective, October the 4th is World Animal Day, which is hugely popular across India and across the world. Yes, every day should be World Animal Day, but this is a wonderful day to celebrate our love, our relationship with animals. Nature Watch Foundation, who I do the campaign work, is responsible for coordinating World Animal Day every year. Just if you only can think about animals for one day, think about it on October the 4th. I don't know whether this is going to go out before then or after, just think of animals on that particular. Take part in World Animal Day. If you can't do it this year, do it next year. What can you do to make lives better for animals by next October the 4th? And let's be in a different place next year than we are this year.
Mark, that's such a wonderful word. Thank you so much for being with us and taking the time out from your precious schedule to be on the show. Thank you so much, Mark.
Thank you very much for the opportunity.